We have moved the graph up and down. We have made it taller. Sometimes the graph moves left and right. So that is the concept of phase shift. Phase shift is how far left or right your function moves before it starts. So every one of our graphs so far has started at the y-axis because there has been no phase shift, and that's because there is nothing inside the parentheses with the x here. You don't see anything with that x, nothing being added or subtracted to it. In fact, it probably should look like this. Because this has happened, there is no phase shift so far. However, it does happen that if something is being subtracted in the parentheses with the x, it moves right. You remember that when we had functions like this, we had y equals x minus 2 squared. You know that's a parabola, but it moves the parabola 2 to the right. We have a similar idea going here with our phase shift. Subtraction in the parentheses means it moves to the right. Addition in the parentheses means it moves to the left. Now, something that's different from what we did before with parabolas is that the number you see is not always exactly how far it moves. What you've got to do is you've got to divide whatever's being added by the coefficient of x. So for instance here, we are subtracting pi, which means it's going to move, the subtraction means it's going to move left, but how far depends on dividing whatever it is here, this term, pi, by the coefficient of x, meaning whatever is right in front of x, which in this case you didn't see anything, so it was a 1. So to figure out how far it goes, we take the pi that was right here, and we divide it by the 1, which was right there. Pi divided by 1 just equals pi. So this function starts pi to the right. So instead of starting at 0, it starts pi to the right. So let's see how that looks on our function. We're going to graph y equals the sine of parentheses x minus pi. So just like any other function that we did, we're going to take our original points and we're going to move them. Every point is going to go pi to the right. So this is initially our original point right there. It is going to move pi to the right and start there instead. That's going to be our point, our first point. Our second point here is at pi over 2 normally. It is now going to be over here at 3 pi over 2. The general shape will be the same. If you notice, every point is moving pi over, or just pi to the right. So now that is there. This point here moved pi to the right, so it's there. This point down here moved pi to the right, so it's right here. And this point here moved pi to the right and ended up right there. So this right here is what our function looks like when it moves pi to the right. Every point moved a whole pi to the right. How are we doing on that? Does that make sense? I hope so. So let's get our power points listed down here. There they are, your power points. Congratulations. Now, moving down to one where we try with cosine. Okay, you should notice that if there's something inside the parentheses with that x, this represents a phase shift. And the phase shift, since you see subtraction, means that it's going to go to the right. But to figure out how far, you've got to take the number that's being subtracted, so pi over 2, and divide it by the coefficient of x, which is 1. So pi over 2 divided by 1, which just equals pi over 2. So our cosine graph has now moved pi over 2 to the right. So instead of starting at the y-axis, it's going to start pi over 2 to the right. And then the next point that we normally have, so it's going to start there. This point has also moved over pi over 2 to the right. So we kind of dip down like that to the baseline. Again, there was no baseline shift on this one. Now pi, this point, has moved over pi over 2 to the right, so it's over here. This point has moved over to that, so we have it right there. And this top point here has moved over pi over 2 to the right, right there. I don't like that one. There we go. So our whole graph has moved over. Instead of starting at the axis, it starts right here. And continues to there, there, and there. You see how everything just moved over 1 to the right, 1 pi over 2 to the right from where it normally is? Everybody scooted over 1 pi over 2 to the right. Okay, let's get our PowerPoints for our friend Mr. Graph. PowerPoints, there they are. Okay, now, if you're ready, we're going to look down at this one. You may notice this not only has a phase shift like we've been talking about, it also has a baseline movement and an amplitude. Woo! If we can do this, we are in the money. So, let's take and start our baseline shift first. That is step 1. Remember, we learned that first. That's why it's step 1. So we go down 3 with our baseline. Our baseline starts down here now. Okay. Then we take our amplitude, which is 2. So we go up 2 from where we were before. From our baseline, we rise up 2. And we also drop down 2. Okay, so we got the lanes that our car drives in now. The only problem is we have to figure out how far the phase shift is. Okay, you may notice already that the subtraction means we're going to the right. And we're going to figure out how far by dividing the number being subtracted by the coefficient of x, which is still a 1. You can't see it, but it's still a 1 out there. So we're moving to the right, pi. Okay, so instead of starting on the axis over here, we're actually going to be starting right here. We basically have moved our axis over. We're starting right here. Now, this is a cosine graph. You know that cosine starts where? Cosine starts at the top of the amplitude. So since we've moved over to the right, we start right there. Okay, at the next point, it's down there on the baseline. At the next one, it's at the bottom. Back to the baseline. Back to the top of the amplitude. There are our 3/4 of our graph divided up by our 5 points. Got a nice cosine graph, but it's just moved over pi to the right, and it's taller than normal, and it had been shifted down. Let's get our PowerPoints for this one. There are your PowerPoints for the graph. Y equals 2 times the cosine of parentheses x minus pi close your parentheses, minus 3. Those are our power points. All right, we're done with step 3. Try the problems below.